the Press with Chuck Todd.
And good morning. The shock waves of the Paris terror attacks continue to be felt, particularly in Europe. Over the weekend, thousands of Muslim protesters angry at the French satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo's latest cover depicting the Prophet Muhammad have taken to the streets across the world, with churches torched and at least 3 people killed in the former French colony of Niger. There have also been anti-terror raids across Europe. Troops have been deployed, in fact, in a number of countries, including Belgium. In a moment, my exclusive interview with the new editor of Charlie Hebdo. But first, our chief foreign correspondent, Richard Engel, on whether the U.S.'s disrupt and dismantle counterterrorism strategy is working.
All over Europe, police and counterterrorism officers have been raiding homes, making arrests, and at one address in Belgium, exchanging heavy fire with suspected terrorists who authorities say were just about ready to launch an attack. Most of the targets are militants who have long been under surveillance and are being pulled in all at once in the wake of the terror attacks in Paris. Europe is stepping up its efforts to stop homegrown terrorists and continuing to send jets to bomb ISIS targets in Iraq. The French Parliament broke into a spontaneous rendition of the national anthem after it voted to recommit the nation to fighting ISIS. President Hollande got a well-photographed tour of a warship to show his own commitment. But the fact is, the U.S. is doing most of the bombing in Syria and Iraq. About 5 of every 6 sorties are conducted by American jets.
We are systematically taking out their fighters. We're destroying their infrastructure. We are putting them on the defensive and helping local forces in Iraq push these terrorists back.
But are they on the defensive? There's another way to look at the Paris attacks, as Islamists starting a counter-offensive.
Things like that cost them almost nothing, but yet it creates a huge amount of furor and fear and anger in the West. So for a very small investment, they're able to have a big psychological effect. And that's the way that they actually are on the offensive and have the initiative.
Being bombed by the U.S. and its allies has elevated ISIS's status and upped its recruiting game. Now, both ISIS and al-Qaeda are telling their supporters in the West that they don't have to travel to Syria and Iraq to join the war. They can stay at home, find targets, and attack. In addition, the massive demonstrations in support of the satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo and the immense popularity of its most recent issue have enraged Muslim protesters around the world. At least 3 demonstrators were killed by police in the French-speaking former West African colony Niger. Angry protests have erupted in other former French colonies from Mali to Algeria. The slogan, "I am Charlie," meant to express solidarity and a defense of freedom of speech, is being understood in parts of the Muslim world to mean "I am with those who ridicule the Prophet Muhammad." And that misunderstanding, with its suggestion of a wider cultural and religious war, helps ISIS and other terrorist groups with a weapon that no jet can destroy: the weapon of propaganda.
And Richard, this brings up a phrase that was very familiar during Vietnam: hearts and minds. The fact of the matter is, we kill a lot of leaders of this radical Islamist movement, but we don't defeat the enemy. Is this a hearts and minds issue, and what is the next strategy, and what should it be?
I think it's a lot more than a hearts and minds campaign. I think there's a hearts and minds campaign internationally to try to convince the world yet again that by fighting ISIS, the United States and other nations are not engaged in a wider war against Islam. Supporting Charlie Hebdo worked somewhat against that message. And then there is the very tactical mission of degrading and destroying ISIS in Syria and Iraq. There has been some progress in Iraq. U.S. military officials have told me they do not believe there has been as much progress as some in the administration are claiming. And in Syria, there's been almost no progress. In fact, just a few days ago, Turkish intelligence said in this country there are about 3,000 people linked to ISIS. That's a big number. We're right on the border. Europol said 5,000 Europeans have gone to fight in Iraq and Syria. So the numbers aren't going down.
Not at all. Richard Engel in Turkey.